Welcome. You're listening to the Grow Ortho podcast, presented by HIP. This podcast is dedicated to orthodontists who want to stand strong in their market and be leaders in their community. Now, on to today's show. Dr. Ben, always good to see you.
Good to see you too, man.
So what started this process? I've interviewed you several times, but for this interview in particular, I was looking through the Fishbein Fundamentals agenda for, March?
Mm-hmm. March our next one, yeah.
And saw mindset as part of your talk. And, this last book that I'm writing in this practice growth series is about mindset. And so I thought we'd just talk about mindset and share ideas.
With orthodontists, with our fundamentals course, we've seen, I think, like 500 practices now. And we get to know, all the orthodontists and how all their practices are doing. And we always try to figure out, what's separating the super successful ones versus the, maybe middle of the road ones. And typically it's their mindset.
Your talk at Fundamentals is one of my favorites. It's always hilarious. But give people just kind of a glimpse. Don't give it all away because, right, they may attend or, we want them to come to Fundamentals. But the overall idea, what are some of the things that you've seen with orthodontists that may actually be hindering them from growth in terms of their mindset?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest lines I should say we hear are that, number one, this won't work in my area. Like the people you have are super different than the people I have, right?
Yeah.
And they all have iPhones. Another thing is, you can't do that. Like you can't, we used to hear you can't do same day starts. Right now, everybody does same day starts. You can't not, it used to be you can't not make models and articulate them, right? Now, like nobody does that. You can't do whitening at your office. You're going to piss off the general dentist. Well, yeah, now everyone's doing that.
Yeah.
So I think it's orthodontists have like this, what you call their mindset or what happens to us in school where we get these thoughts of, you can't do these things, even though it's better for the patient, it's better for the practice, it's better for your team. I don't know where that stems from, if it's an academic thing, but I think the orthodontists that we see who are the most successful are the ones who are kind of able to overcome that.
Yeah, I guess it kind of goes back to limiting beliefs. We place these limits on ourselves that aren't really true, but we tell ourselves that they're true. It goes back to that line, that quote you always say, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're probably right.
Yeah. Henry Ford, by the way.
Yeah. So it's also interesting. I heard a stat the other day, and I have no idea if it's true, so don't quote me on this, but probably about 80% of people's thoughts are negative thoughts. It sounds, even if we kind of play back the thoughts in our own head, and I think, people with good mindsets, people who are resilient and leading the pack to kind of find a way to tune some of that out.
Totally. So much self-doubt.
Yeah. Let's talk about developing your abundant mindset. When I started my business or when I was younger and, there was a lot of fear. It was always like scarcity. Is this going to work? I lived actually in an apartment in a complex that my father-in-law owned just because of so much debt, school debt. Decided to start my own company, came to, kind of find out my wife had a ton of school debt. Your back's against the wall and you talking about self-doubt and limiting beliefs, you have a lot of that. But as people grow, I think that we both, even over the 6 or 7 years we've known each other, we've changed a lot in terms of more of an abundance mindset.
Yeah.
You see some people who can kind of never cross that bridge, and you can kind of see how it really holds them back. But in terms of your own abundant mindset, did you ever land on that and say, hey, like, I've got to change, or like, how do you kind of think about that?
I don't know when that change happened, but, I was like, most orthodontists that we talked to, including myself at one point, if we saw like someone in braces and they weren't our patient, we'd get like, mad and like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they went there. Like my daughter goes to school with her, how could they go to another orthodontist? Like there's only, X amount of patients that need braces. And now, I'm not getting that, I'm losing that number. But, we're not in competition with other orthodontists. We're in competition with like Best Buy, right? Like people who are going to spend their money. There's plenty of people out there, and what percentage of people are getting orthodontic treatment? The numbers I hear, the number of people who are getting orthodontic treatment that could benefit from it, I hear are like 5%, maybe less. I don't know if you have that number, but there's plenty of people who could benefit from orthodontic treatment. So let's help them. And my mindset's just, serve everybody you can.
Yeah, and get out of your own way.
Get out of your own way.
So I think, and again, don't quote me on this, but I think recently Gauge or OrthoFi or somebody put out a stat that said 95 million people could get treatment in the U.S., and only 5 to 6 million get treated per year.
Yeah, so about 5. I mean,
yeah,
that's close. Yeah,
and then
5%.
you look at the data and stats, and I think by 2027, orthodontics should go from about 2 billion to 4 billion in the U.S. It may be more than that. Obviously, when we look at those numbers of 95 million that could be treated, that's a ton of people. It's the number one question we hear when people come to partner with HIP is, you're not going to work with my competition, are you? Now, in some cases, that could be like a real question and something to worry about, specifically if you live in a location with 15,000 people or, really small area. When we see people in New Orleans or Atlanta or Austin, Texas, and it's like, well, you're a $2 to $3 million practice, how many people could you treat? You live in a population with millions of people. To your point, is it something to even be focused on?
No, actually, I want the orthodontists around me to do better. I mean, so I feel like, when they're doing better, I'm doing better. And we all have our pockets, I would say. Like there's, certain types of patients that come to me, certain types of patients that come to them, certain, dental referrals we all have. But typically, the better they're doing, the better I'm doing. And also the better they're doing, the less likely they're going to mess with me.
Yeah.
So, I want them to do well.
Yeah. And this kind of goes in with what you just said, where like you may attract a certain type of patient. Maybe there's somebody low fee, braces only. Maybe there's somebody who only does indirect bonding. But even beyond that, your X factor, what's your genius and your specialty? How important is it to kind of define that and know where you want to go and what you're good at?
Does it define you, or are you defined by that? Is it something you can intentionally set out, or do you kind of see, where you are in the market? And, for me, it was just, I'm going to reduce the obstacles of coming in the door and starting treatment. I'm going to serve everybody I can. I'm going to, have high quality of treatment, but be affordable. We've never been super low fee. And I think, there's advantages to that. We never went that route. We made affordable payment plans. We've actually recently, we've continued to raise our fee. And then when you add in, we do the retainer plan, we do whitening, which we're selling to like 90+% of all the patients who start treatment at our office. When you add those two things in, we're actually, one of the more expensive orthodontists in our area, if not the most expensive. And that's not really the road I wanted to. I mean, that's not what I intended when I started, but we're not having an issue with conversion rate. Patients are happy with our services, and as long as they're happy, I'm happy.
In terms of maybe drilling down into your own X factor, what you're good at, your skill set, your genius, what are some of the distractions you've seen orthodontists be consumed with where they may not be able to really think about their X factor and work on that and get better at that? What are some of the hang-ups?
Well, I was reading your notes earlier. I don't know if I can bring this up, but shiny object syndrome.
Yeah.
Right? So did you come up with that?
I don't think I came up with
Okay.
it, but I intentionally wanted to put it in the book, and we can kind of talk about this because it's super detrimental to growth, and specifically with orthodontists.
Yeah, I mean, orthodontists, right? I think by nature we're all sort of like technology junkies, and we'll get excited about something, and again, there's some really cool stuff out there. So I don't want to knock anything, but when I'm making a decision, the decision is is this going to bring more patients into the door? Is this going to make my life easier? Is this going to be a better service for my patients? Besides those really three things, everything else is sort of noise. I don't, it's also super hard to sell technology to patients.
They don't know.
I'm not sure how many of them care. I think they're there for the orthodontist and the team and the reputation of the practice and the convenience and how they feel when they go in there. And I don't know, with some of these newer technologies, they're super cool, but they're, unless you're able to treat more patients more effectively, bring more patients to your door, sometimes it's difficult to see the benefit. Sometimes I think they get in the way.
Yeah. Well, also one thing that we've been looking at is just practices P&L statements and some of these technologies. If you're kind of a tech geek or you love gadgetry, it can kind of tickle your fancy. But then when you start to look at your P&L and it's like, for instance, my lab fees may have gone up 100%. I went from 30 or 40% margins to 10% margins. And, that's not something you want to see a business owner. That's not a decision you want to see them make, because obviously you want a healthy practice, a profitable practice. And sometimes, you do have to say, hey, in the betterment for the practice or the patient, we'll take a hit, on profitability. But I think it's a balancing act. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Did you know I used to do indirect bonding for like the first year of my practice?
I don't think so.
I did indirect bonding for the first year of my practice. I'm not knocking it, because I think some orthodontists do really fantastic treatment with it. And if they're providing a better service to their patients with it than without it, I think it's a good thing. But for me, it was not. So for me, we originally did it because we thought, the patients will like this better. It will save doctor time at the chair, so I'll be able to see more patients. Even though at the time I was seeing like 20 patients a day, so it was not like I was busy at all. And we just thought, this is a selling point. Like we do indirect bonding, patients will come in. Well, number one, it didn't really save any doctor time, because how long does it really take you to bond brackets? And also, is the doctor time the limiting factor in the number of patients your office can see? Typically, it's not. Typically, it's limited by number of chairs or number of team members. Because I think I won't get into it, but I think an orthodontist can see a pretty high volume of patients and provide good treatment, assuming they have the right systems and the right team and the right number of chairs and all that. But not only that, we found out our conversion rate, once we switched out from indirect bonding, our conversion rate went up, and we're like, how would that be? Because indirect bonding, we're telling them we have this great bracket system, and we prepare the brackets, and so number one, the patients didn't care about it, right? And it actually added time to the consult, which I think is a way to kill conversions. But number two, what we found was patients were excited to get braces the same day they came into their new patient appointment. They were there like, you can get braces today? We can get braces today? We're so excited about that. Indirect bonding for us killed that. So for us, it was not good. I know for a lot of offices, they swear by it and they have incredible success with it. I just wasn't able to.
It's interesting you say that. Harrison and I went to Salem to visit Castilla Orthodontics, one of our partners, and I was just kind of blown away at how well they do. And it's so simple. Like, they've removed anything complex from the patient experience. It's braces only.
She's a beast, man. She's awesome. I've gotten to know Anna and her husband, and they have a awesome practice, and they're even cooler people. So they got it going.
I think I'm actually going to interview them next week.
Oh, cool.
But to your point, all their patients were so excited to be just getting on braces.
Right.
And they made it exciting and celebrated with them. And it's like, I don't know, maybe you can just scale actually easier and help your patients and make it easier for them.
Well, there's different things that orthodontists get excited about and patients get excited about. Orthodontists get excited about, indirect bonding, just an example, or
some crazy new modality
or modality. Yeah. Patients, braces.
Yeah. With shiny object syndrome too, and this is a big thing we see obviously with doing marketing, is people will come to us and say, how many starts are you going to guarantee? Sadly, there's a lot of marketers out there that run these type of offers, and then they have super high churn and end up going out of business or jumping to a new vertical because they burn themselves in ortho. We don't make guarantees.
Is that a thing? People are guaranteeing?
Yeah.
So, oh, wow.
Yeah.
How can they? Oh, that's,
Yeah.
I don't know how that is possible.
Our guarantee is kind of like yours, like, hey, if you wear your rubber bands, then
Yeah.
we can promise you the teeth are going to move. It's scientific. I
Right.
think you know enough about our model where it's pretty scientific. If the practice does their part, it's going to work. It's not rocket science. But, with shiny object syndrome, we'll see technology, a new patient engagement tool, a chat on the website. This marketing company guaranteed me, 100 leads a week or 100K in revenue a month. And it's like, if it's too good to be true, it probably is. If it sounds too good to be true. And I kind of want to talk about that too, because I feel bad when people go buy these things and then you hear these stories.
Well, again, if it's not bringing patients in your door, it's not improving the treatment for your patients, it's not making your life easier, why?
Yeah. And maybe beware for some things that are marketed that way, but
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't do it. I've never signed up for any service that said we guarantee you, this number of because that's a ridiculous statement. Nobody can.
yeah. Let's talk about legacy for a second.
Legacy.
Legacy is personally something I used to never really think about until I got a little bit more established, had a family. For me, personally, we even talked about this at dinner the other night and how having kids, my whole philosophy has kind of shifted.
And now you want to have unlimited number of kids? You just want to keep having kids?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, as many as we can.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
love that. Yeah. I hope you didn't care. I just shouted you out on the podcast for that.
Yeah. Hopefully she's okay with it.
Yeah.
In terms of legacy for me, I think about not only what I can kind of create with my companies, but what's going to last beyond that. Obviously, part of my legacy is having as much impact on the partners that we have. So helping business owners make the best decisions with their time, money, marketing, health. That's great. But beyond that, I've started to kind of think a little bit more about, well, how do I kind of pave the way for those after me and directly my family? Is that important? Is that something you think about, legacy? Like, how's that kind of play into your own life?
Yeah, I mean, I do, right? And I think about I got 2 daughters now, and I think about their life, and what's kind of interesting is, like, you try not to care what people think about you, but you do, and the people that I really care what they think about me are my daughters, right? And I it's funny, it's like, as a kid, you think, oh man, I always want my parents to be proud of me, but now, as a dad, I'm thinking all the time, like, man, I hope my daughters are proud of me. And it's a weird it's a weird thing. So you want to do good. So, for me, it's showing them, whatever, like, they're not going to care how many millions of dollars you produce in your practice. They're going to care if you're a good human being. And so for me, it's trying to do good where I can, trying to do the right thing. What brings you satisfaction? And for me, like, listen, money's great. Like, I never want to downplay that, but watching those around you succeed, like, and you were a part of that. I look at my team members. I look at Amanda Floyd. I look at Brittany Svoboda. I look at Sarah Howe, and I'm watching. I look at them like, wow, they are so successful. I like to think I played a small part in that, and when I think about that, it brings me a lot of happiness, and again, I don't think that's my legacy, but it's just something that brings me satisfaction.
Yeah. Well, I think that's part of it, right? Because, like, if you look at impact and if it's all about you, your ego's the biggest in the room and you're selfish and kind of more concerned about yourself, I think that plays a part, specifically how you're remembered too. What are people going to say about Ben Fishbein or Luke Infinger when we're not here? I think that's important. It's interesting that you bring up, your daughters, because I remember at the last Fishbein Fundamentals, you had added some slides in with your family, and I think it made a lot of people in the room think. It certainly kind of made me think of, like, oh yeah, like, am I spending enough time with my daughter?
My priority for, since I was an orthodontist, was my orthodontic practice. Number one priority over, I hate to say this and I'm embarrassed to say it, but over my family, over my wife, over my daughter. Now we have 2 daughters, but and I think one of the reasons that we we did so well because I was so driven. Now, if I would have done everything over again, wouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
The first 3+ years of my daughter's life, we were, I don't want to say we were not close, like we always lived together and everything,
Yeah.
but we didn't have a great connection. And the past couple of years, we are super close, super connected. And it feels good. I'm more connected with my wife, and now we have a new baby, so we're not connected yet, but hopefully. But I don't know if I've told you this before, but used to be when I went on vacation, like if we went on vacation, didn't matter if I was with my family, if I was by myself, whatever it was, I'd always come back early. Always. It didn't matter. I changed so many flights. I didn't care what I paid to change the flight to come back a day early. I didn't care if I had a extra night or two in the hotel. I'd be like, I got to get early, and I got to work on the practice somehow, even if it was like a Saturday or Sunday. And that was crazy, right? That was probably not healthy. So I've learned to realize what's most important, and it's always going to be your family.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I kind of share a similar story where the first couple of years, like in my marriage, I wasn't even present, and I was so worried. And again, going back to kind of scarcity and fear, I think it did kind of propel the business forward faster. But I think there's maybe a better way to do it. Certainly, I was talking about this earlier today, is just like your team, placing trust in your team, mentoring people. I would venture to say your business and practice is a lot more successful today than back then. Yeah. And yes, certainly your hard work helped you, but I think the reason why it keeps going and keeps growing, I'll just speak for myself, is like the team and how we invest in the team. And then that whole analogy and quote, work smarter, not harder. Yeah. You kind of figure that out. I guess the cool thing is we're discovering this, and hopefully it's just the beginning, because you see some people who never do. And that certainly kind of makes me sad. And it's something to look at and say, oh, well, I don't want to be that, and remember that.
It's like the theme of, the underlying theme here is get out of your own way. And even when you think you're getting out of your own way, you're still in your own way. And that doesn't always apply to your business. Sometimes it's your, everything else. You get in the way of being with your family.
Yeah.
And I think, you see a lot of orthodontists that are, high anxiety and have, some mental health issues. And I think, if I could tell myself something, if I could talk to myself from 5 years ago, I would say, hey, it's going to be okay. Why don't you step back a little bit, and you don't have to do everything you're doing. It's okay. Yeah.
Let's talk about stewardship for a second. I don't know if this is a word you really think about. It's a word that I kind of started to think about more. And, I grew up in a Christian household. The Bible talks about stewardship a lot, but specifically with orthodontists, and I think this is probably transcends all business verticals, you have something that could really be good, you could reap a really good harvest down the road. But instead of kind of tilling the soil and working on what's in front of you, it's kind of like the shiny object. Something appears over here, and you go start doing that thing, and you can't steward the thing that you already had, and you keep doing that, sometimes in perpetuity. And so everything that you kind of have kind of sucks. And I'll paint it like this. I see a lot of practices starting to add associates and locations. This makes it more practical. And I'll talk to them, and they're like, oh yeah, well, my flagship office is only doing like $500,000. So I decided to go start a new office, and I'm going to bring in a new doctor per diem and pay him premium per day. And they keep doing that. And then you got like 4 locations you're paying rent on, all this equipment, loans, all your money's going out the door on that stuff, plus these associate or doctor or contract, whether they be contracts or per diem type of situation. And the business isn't healthy. Again, I went to see Castilla, 1 location. Yeah. And they stewarded that location and invested in that and have grown it, and they're reaping the reward. So kind of what's your thought process with me sharing that?
Well, I'll say this. So I used to be impressed, like when orthodontists talk to each other, it's like, oh, I have 8 offices, Oh, whoa, I got I got 4 doctors working for me. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And that's what I used to be impressed with. Now it's like the opposite. Now I'm like, wait, you got one office, just you, and you're doing what numbers?
Mm-hmm.
And I know some doctors. I mean, the doctor I know who's the most, I would say, financially successful orthodontist in terms of what they're bringing home per year. I'm not talking about a sale. I'm not talking about anything else. Is a one doctor, one office practice, and it's somebody who I believe last time I checked is only working like something like 10 days a month. And so, you wonder, how is that possible? And the answer is, I don't know. I gotta go visit that person. But
We'll both go.
Yeah, yeah. They'll let us come. I think it is like the idea of you look like, oh, I have this empire. Like, people would come up to me like, oh, you have 8 offices. Like, well, I'm like, yeah, man, I wish I was doing what I was doing in 8. I was doing in 4.
Yeah. So all that glitters isn't gold. It looks cool, but then when you start to peel back the layers, it's like, well, this may not be the smartest setup.
Totally.
A practice that I always reference, she came to Fundamentals, Dr. Connect.
Yeah.
And she started 6 weeks before the pandemic, and she's kind of stayed away from that. She doesn't listen to a lot of the things that you kind of hear within the orthodontic community.
Yeah, that's good.
She's 2.5 years in. Her take home and profitability is higher than practices I see sometimes 20 years old, but 5, 10 years old, and they've got all these locations and and they can't even make the most of it. And then they're spread so thin, and then like you said, it adds more stress, more anxiety. And that's why I really like the principle of stewardship. Is like, okay, this is what I have. I'm going to pour everything into this until I can maximize that. And then, the model then is duplicatable, because then it's like, okay, let's just say hypothetically, I'm doing, $4 million, one doctor, my profitability somewhere around 40% net margins. Mm-hmm. Now I'm going to duplicate this same model. We've worked out all the kinks. Some of my core team can travel to this new location, but then we'll hire new roles, and we know how to train them because our team's really good, because we had stewardship and leadership and invested in this team. And then I'm going to go get an associate, and then I'm going to mentor that associate. And then that location is going to add another $2 million in 24 months and increase profitability, take home, everybody wins.
Yeah.
But rarely does that happen, and you see the opposite happening.
Yeah. Well, the only argument I'd make against that is you can do 2 things at once. So you can, opening another office doesn't prevent you from growing your current office. But, in terms of profitability, which is something that, in terms of the financial part of the practice, the most important, right, is the most profitable you can be is I think that one doctor, one office at full capacity. But, you never see that.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you do, so very, very rarely, but.
Well, for me, it's just focus. Technically, you can do anything, right? Anything's possible. And there's people out there who may be listening who have done that. Maybe they've scaled to 10 locations and they're just crushing it.
Yeah.
But I think most people can't focus when that happens.
Totally. And particularly if they don't have the team to help them.
Yeah.
Right. So, but I could tell you this, if let's say I was competing against an orthodontist, and we both opened in the same town, and I opened one office, and they opened up right next to me, right? And they opened up 3 to 4 offices, right? And they're splitting their time between those 3 offices. They're splitting their marketing dollars between those 3 offices. They're splitting their team between those 3 offices. I'm going to crush them, right? Yeah. Because I'm just, and not because I'm better than them, because I'm going to put all my focus, all my time, all my marketing dollars, all my people into that one location. So, not saying, as someone who's opened up many locations, I'm not saying not opening multiple locations, but kind of what you said before. It's like your focus, don't lose focus.
Something I've heard a lot lately and been reminded of in business, it's timing. In real estate, it's location. Business, it's timing, timing.
Yeah.
For me, and what I like to encourage people on, and the practice owners I talk to, because again, I want to help them, is, hey, it's exciting now. Let's take a step back and think about it logically versus emotionally, and then weigh if it's still the best decision right now.
Yeah, and there's some orthodontists that they think they always have to be doing something new, and like I'm going to use myself as an example because I feel like a hypocrite when I say this, and I did it myself, where I feel like I have to be opening another office. Like I'm not being productive if I'm not working on a new office or something like that. Like it's okay, like you're doing good, just keep doing what you're doing, and it'll grow organically.
So, kind of shifting lanes just a little bit, what are some ways that you think orthodontists should invest in themselves if they do want to grow faster and easier?
Well, I think investing in their team is probably the best thing they can do. Like when we were, starting out, I brought my team to all the meetings, right? Like, and people would say to me, "Oh my gosh, like you're gonna make this investment in your team. Like, what if they leave next week?" I'm like, "Well, what if they don't? If they don't leave, I need to make sure that they're getting better." So.
Yeah.
I never worried about that. And I brought teams to meetings and some of them left. And, listen, I hope that those team members got something out of that meeting and, or whatever, and came back a better person and helped their next office, more. But I think number one, investing in your team. Number two would be going to visit other practices. I still like going to visit other practices. It's like my favorite thing to do because I am always shocked what people are doing, both good and bad. Mm-hmm. And I learned in both scenarios. And part of my role with small doctors is I do go to see these other practices, and I learn something every time. And I think you can learn something from anybody. And I'll typically, sometimes going to some talks are difficult for me. I'm pretty ADD, but when I go to a practice, I'll always come back with a couple pearls and be able to improve. Sometimes it's not always business stuff. Sometimes it's like clinical or just time management or just kind of a, just a self-reflection thing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, just even in terms of myself, having more time and spending, like I said, working smarter, not harder, you kind of realize like even investing in yourself, I've kind of become a little bit of a health nut. You know what I mean? Like, okay.
And I know. We should talk on this podcast about some of the stuff you do health-wise.
Yeah. Ice baths?
Yeah. Are you doing those now?
Yeah.
Oh.
So
how many minutes?
Well, rarely actually do I do ice. I just take cold showers, sometimes 2 to 3 times a day. So every shower I take is cold. And then I do these biohacker baths at night, which is like Epsom salt, magnesium, food grade hydrogen peroxide, baking soda in a bath as hot as you can get it. You soak in that for like 30 minutes. Then you get out and jump in a cold shower. And it lowers inflammation, increases blood flow, helps you sleep better. I track my sleep. So like even water I drink, like I'm got this crazy filtration system on my house. And I think for me, it's just being natural, knowing the food that you're eating. So I have a garden. I was talking to a guy the other day and he's like, oh, the meat, you need to be careful about the meat you eat. It needs to be like fresh kill. And if you look at food production and the way meat is made, animals before they're killed, their cortisol is usually through the roof and trauma. And so chemicals are releasing through their body which would happen with severe trauma. And then you're eating that.
Holy shit. So what are you doing for meat?
I mean,
are you not eating meat? Or?
So I still am, but I'm looking at like, and have always tried to eat, like free roaming meat. So like, free roam, nothing added to the meat, but then starting to look at like freshly killed. So like if, for instance, I moved out into the middle of nowhere, you got to come over, 15 acres.
You got chickens?
Not yet, but I'm getting chickens. This egg crisis.
Yeah, that's right.
Let's not talk
Gold
about
mine with
that.
those chickens at your house.
But, like for instance, if I opened up my window, I could literally open up my window and shoot a deer. There's deer everywhere.
Oh, really?
That animal doesn't know that it's about to be killed. And so there's not all these chemicals running through their body of fear and trauma. And so that translates into what's in the meat and then what's inside of you when you eat it.
Well, I think we go to the same health doctor who's one of your clients too. But my cortisol levels were bad, dude.
Really?
They were bad.
Did you do the saliva testing?
test,
And you
yeah.
did it like throughout the day?
Yeah, it was bad.
Yeah. Yeah, there's all these little things. So like I worked with this guy,
Yeah.
and I've actually referred some orthodontists to him. He built me like a 40-page protocol. If anybody wants it, I'll share it with them.
I want it.
I'll share it
Okay,
with
thank you. Yeah.
But it's really interesting. And I mean, it's kind of like what we're talking about in business, like keep it simple, stupid. Like
Right.
a lot of the most healthy people, it's so simple. You know, grow your own food, rip stuff out of the ground and eat it, shoot stuff and know where your meat's coming from. Like it's just simple.
Right. Just trying to eat a lot of processed stuff.
Yeah.
The tough thing is a kid. I don't know about your daughter. My daughter, like, she'll go get a sandwich or something and just eat the bread. I mean, it's just,
Yeah.
it's
Well, and
I
as
don't
a-
know if you're able to you got any advice there?
Well, as a kid,
Yeah.
I mean, you can do a lot of things as a kid you can't do as
That's
an
true,
adult.
too.
Your
Yeah.
your organs are new, your blood's new. You're going to regenerate much faster.
That's true.
Once you get older, it's like
Yeah, I know. It's tougher, man.
So anyway, something I'm always thinking about. If you want to know more about that, just hit me up, free to share. But to kind of wrap this up, I want to talk about the EMyth in business. So to kind of bring this back home, bring it back to business. I don't know if you've ever read this book, The EMyth by Michael Gerber.
No, it's
Have
on
you
my
heard of
list.
it?
I have heard of it.
Okay.
I haven't read it, yeah.
So I'll walk you through it real quick. In the book, it talks about the technician, the manager, and the visionary. Okay, so there's 3 core roles that is within any business, and most business owners have to be all 3. So if you thought about your practice when you kind of started and bought it from Dr. Austin,
At least at first, right?
Right, at
Yeah,
first.
Yeah, at first, yeah.
But my point is fast forward, and some of these practices we're seeing that aren't growing, that have poor mindsets, when you dig into them, they're like, I'm running payroll. I actually go do part of my consult, my TCs and TC training. And then I'm like, oh, well, how long has she worked with you? A year. Like, what do you mean she's still in TC training? You can call it micromanagement, okay?
Micromanaging your TCs, yeah.
And then when I talk to these
TCs love that. Yeah,
they thrive in that.
Yeah. Yeah. Thriving environment for them. When the doctor's sitting over their shoulder and saying the exact same thing they just told the patient. Patients love that too. It's great.
Adds an hour and a half exam in
Right.
there.
Oh, yeah. The patient loves to be sitting there a couple hours. Fantastic.
But, you know, I look at this and some of it, when I try to talk to the doctor, it's like egos, you know, like, oh, well, I can do it better. Or I can do everything. Or, you know, yeah, there's very specific ways this needs to be done and only I can do it. Again, it all goes back to what we're talking about.
Getting out of your own way.
Getting out of your own way.
I say orthodontists are typically good at one thing, orthodontics. You know,
Right.
Everything else look, you got some exceptions, but orthodontists are typically intelligent people. They've been in school for a long time to learn one thing. So, you know, in terms of relating to the average patient, probably not their strong suit, although there are some obvious exceptions. But look, if someone can do something 80% of the job that you can do, but although they're typically doing it like 120% because they're probably better at it than you, you need to delegate that. You should. I think the best use of an orthodontist's time is orthodontics, and you know, to be the most efficient you could be, I think it's delegating everything your license doesn't require you to do yourself.
That's really good. So the way I explain it is, an orthodontist, if you think about it, is a technician, because doing orthodontics, you're doing the work, right?
Sure.
In a lot of cases, you're overseeing a lot of it.
Right. You're not changing the wires yourself, but you're seeing the patient.
You're seeing the patient, okay? That is a technician. And I don't want people to get confused. I'm not calling orthodontists like dental techs.
Right, a dental assistant, sure.
Right. It's just the function of the role. Like if I'm a designer and I start a design business and I'm doing the design, I'm a technician,
Sure.
okay? So that is one of the key things. But then the orthodontist, again, the really effective and fast-growing practices I see, the orthodontist is the technician and the visionary. Mm-hmm. Okay, and Ernie McDowell, who's a friend of ours, said, when I work in the practice, I'm working for Janet, who is his COO. When we're not in the practice and not running clinic, Janet works for me.
Oh, I love that. It's
right?
Totally
Simple.
true. Totally true.
And sadly, most of the orthodontists who aren't growing, who are frustrated, come to me, they're kind of frantic and it's not working, and it never was working, and it's probably not going to work in the future. They're specifically managing when you look at it. Well, who does this person report to? Oh, me. And you run payroll and you do, and you look at it and it's like, there's no way the practice can grow. Now, maybe you can get to $1 million or
sure,
you can get beyond that,
Yeah.
but I've never seen anyone happy, and I've never seen a practice who can continue to grow where the orthodontist is continuing to do all three. And like I said, maybe it's out there. I just haven't seen it.
Yeah. No, I think you're right about that. I think you're right. I mean, I'm sure there's some exceptions, but typically, I mean, again, it goes back to getting out of your own way, but typically the ones, and we've talked about this, the ones who are doing super well have a really strong, whether you want to call that person an office manager, a COO, a CEO, but someone who's really running the practice. That's not the orthodontist.
Cool. Well, I think we talked about a lot. This is my favorite podcast so far that I've done with you.
Same here, man. I
think it's the studio.
Dude, this studio is sick, man. We got to I gotta come back here and play some ping pong, man. It's
for sure.
Good spot.
Anything before we pop off? Any last words? Want to shout out anything?
No. Hey, shout out to HIP for bringing a shitload of patients to my door and allowing me to provide a fantastic service for those patients, and helping us grow to 110, 115 team member practice now. So thank you guys.
Congrats. Our pleasure.
Hey, we were I think we had 10 people when we joined HIP, so it helped us a little bit.
Yeah. Well, likewise. You've helped us a little bit, so appreciate it.
Thanks, man.
Thanks for listening. If you'd like to learn more about HIP or any of the topics in this episode, send an email to hello@hipcreativeinc.com. That's hello@hipcreativeinc.com, or jump over to our website at hip.agency.